Oh, and one thing I was thinking about, I think part of the problem, I don't know if this makes sense, smart people making really good smart technology that dumb people get to use. This is what I mean by that. A year or two ago, when I was working at the first Amazon facility, I had this really good friend I worked with, and she was awesome, a little rednecky, but fun and cool, and we joked around, had a great time, goofed off at work, made fun of the right people, got along with the right people, like great, we all got along, just fine. And because Trump wasn't president at the time, I didn't even know for like 6 months she was a Trump fan. And then somehow it came up somewhere along the line, and we started talking about it, and I was like, seriously, you? How is this possible? And she was really young, you know. She was someone I wouldn't have been friends with. We never would have ran into each other, you know, if it wasn't for working together. But so she was a little naive and just kind of bought into the shit that these Trumpers believe. I'm talking about the like non-racist, horrible Trumpers, the ones that like think he's a good dude trying to help people and stuff. And one of the things I remember her talking about, liberalism, in many of our debates going back and forth, one of the things that came up, that she's talking about how people are too tolerant of other people's beliefs, because she was nice and she's accepting of gay people and trans people and stuff, but she thought there was a limit to it. And she was talking about how they were putting litter boxes in elementary school classrooms or middle school classrooms or whatever it was for kids who identified as cats, which I don't know if you remember that, but it was a big thing that was spread around the media that was never true at all. It wasn't like, oh, I identify as a cat, so now the school has to cater to that and put a litter box in the classroom for me to go in. That was never really a thing. But a lot of right-wing people believed it was, including her, because it was spread that way, when really it was because they were putting litter boxes in classrooms as part of an emergency kit in case there was a school shooting and you were locked down in your classroom for a long time because there was a school shooting going on and you had to, you know, relieve yourself. Well, there's a litter box. It's better than just going on the floor in a trash can or something, right? So it was really, honestly, a good and very sad, necessary thing that they turned to this thing. And it spread because of the internet. With the internet and everyone having a cell phone and access to all the world's knowledge and communication, being able to spread stuff, one byproduct of it that I touched on in messages from the other day, this kind of thing, is that people with niche beliefs and ideas that in the past would have kind of just been the random crazy guy at work or in your town or neighborhood or whatever, now can connect with hundreds of thousands of other of those crazy people and feed off each other and then spread it. So it just becomes worse. So I think there is a huge problem we have where most of the population is not intelligent, either through like general intelligence or emotional intelligence, enough to handle the kind of technology where you can see all these things and you don't know what's fake, what's real, you don't know how to look into things. And so putting this technology in the hands of simpler people has prolificated this problem. And I don't know how to reconcile that. Like, you can't put the cat back in the bag and you can't just make people smarter. It doesn't seem like appealing to them and trying to educate them works. They like to latch on to what's comforting or easy and just fucking run with it. So I don't know.
That's a great point about technology. I remember Ian and I had a conversation a few years ago about how like our brains are not meant to process all of this information that we get now. And that's part of the reason everything's so confusing. And it's also part of the reason that people naturally silo themselves into these weird echo chambers where there's like only so many different perspectives that we can sort of like tolerate. And I think not only has that been the natural progression of humans over these years of social media and stuff, but also I think on the top level where, you know, people who are designing these systems have also designed them that way. I think they picked up on the fact that people are very overwhelmed and emotionally emotionally exercised in the wrong way, overly emotionally exercised by being constantly barraged with all of these different conflicting perspectives. And so they built the machines to more to be more targeted and sort of put people in more like isolated echo chambers is the common phrase. But obviously the downside to that is that people, I think we're at a point now where like people are completely unfamiliar with perspectives that contradict their own. And probably the more that the autopsy of this election is done, the more we're going to see that like the people who voted for Trump in many cases probably were just the amount of information that they were receiving was not only incredibly low, but it was also incredibly like limited to certain sources, whatever stuff that they decided they liked, or just stuff that the algorithm decided that they responded well to. And so people just kind of like, I don't think people thought very hard about this. And I think people are exhausted of that. And I mean, I can even track that with my own sort of development over this last decade or so, because I remember how overwhelming the Trump years were at first, especially because all of a sudden it was like this barrage of information and everybody's living in a different reality, and that's only gotten worse. But I think the part that has changed is that like people aren't as inundated by the different perspectives and rather are just kind of like siphoned off into their different respective worldviews online. And that probably is a big part. I think that's the natural progression of psyop machines like Cambridge Analytica and Facebook itself, Twitter now. There's definitely some studying to be done about Elon Musk's control of Twitter and how that has effectively radicalized people, which I did not think that was going to be the case. I thought that Twitter and Elon Musk in general was going to be kind of a non-factor in this election, but that does not appear to be the case. I think, maybe it's not that, maybe he hasn't used it that effectively, but it's like whatever he's doing over there is part of the broader trend in American politics, it seems like, and he may even have a lot to do with it. But what he's doing is he's specifically trying to silo people into these right-wing, limited spaces of information, and going extremely far right with some of it too. Like in some cases, this is like very, very far right stuff, and people are only exposing themselves to that. And so over time, the idea that anybody would think any differently from that becomes ridiculous. And this happens with all of us too. I mean, this is the case with anti-Trump and people who are following Kamala Harris. It's like the idea that people would have any positive view of Trump from that perspective is unthinkable. And that's what we're missing, is that while all those things that we think of Trump may not be wrong, I don't believe they're wrong. I think they're all correct assessments of who Trump is and how bad his policies are. But people, a huge amount of the electorate, more so than 2016, is being like effectively inundated with propaganda that's isolating them from, really any counter perspective against Trump, or at least making the counter perspective against Trump look as stupid as possible, which is the name of the game. And it seems like it's worked. The dumbest moment of Joe Rogan that I've ever seen, only because I don't watch him much. If I watched him a lot, there probably would be countless dumber moments that I could think of. But it was in the interview with Elon Musk, the recent one. Not sure if that's the same as the clip you sent, but Elon Musk was saying that he believes that if Trump doesn't win, that it would be the last election because Democrats are going to completely replace the voting population of every single swing state with illegal immigrants. That was almost verbatim what he said, and Joe Rogan just does that thing where he like looks off to the like upper left, and he just goes, "Wow, that's crazy, man." Like really like thinking about it, you know what I mean? Like really imagining what Elon said and being like, "Wow, that's so crazy. You're so right, man." It's like that's what Joe Rogan talking to Elon Musk, like he really does just think he's the smartest guy.
Yeah, that is from the most recent one. That clip I sent, I think, is a previous one. It's hard to tell because Elon's wearing that dumb Occupy Mars shirt, which doesn't even really make any sense in both episodes, or in the two most recent, I believe. But yeah, that moment you're talking about is part of the rant Elon went on that Joe says is what convinced him to vote for and endorse Trump. So that little thing, that moment where he's looking off into the distance, he is being inspired to finally endorse Trump like 2 nights before the election or whatever it was, which I'm sure turned some favor towards him. But I feel like most of Rogan's base and the kind of people that like are going to base who they vote for on what like Joe Rogan says, we're already going to vote for Trump. I don't think Joe really affected the numbers too much in that decision. I think he definitely has, by years of having these right-wing grifters on and people like Elon and stuff like that, who might as well be one. Thinking Elon is like the smartest guy in the world is an easy mistake to make at first when you just look at like what he says and what he does. But when you actually like watch him talk and then see his pattern of behavior in the public and some of the choices he makes, and you find out that a lot, I mean, he's clearly a smart guy, but the stuff that he likes to tout, like being the founder of Tesla when really he just bought it and stuff like that, isn't as much super genius as it is just kind of like evil businessman genius, you know? I don't know how many of the actual innovations at SpaceX or within Tesla or the Boring Company or whatever he made were actually his scientific ideas. I'm sure he's done some stuff, but I think he's much more like Edison than he is like Tesla.
Yeah, Elon Musk is definitely more like Edison, which is what makes his company being named Tesla kind of like a cosmic punchline. He's much more of an Edison type. Pretty much in all, it's funny how replicable that is. The whole idea of like, you know, using all this various intellectual property and patents to sort of build your own fortune, but not actually being the one who invents anything. I mean, that's like Elon Musk to a T. The one thing that I will say about him, though, is that he seems to be pretty effective at running large-scale projects, more so than I wanted to give him credit for. You know, obviously with Tesla, I mean, he has been at the head of Tesla the whole time. And like, you know, during the period where it brought electric cars to the forefront, which like did make a serious impact on our society. But I think any positive impact of that has definitely been outweighed by what he's been doing since. And there was some reporting that even in terms of Tesla, he was usually just getting in the way more than anything. But even with Twitter, I have to say, I mean, you know, I viewed what he was doing with Twitter as essentially just like a child trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, you know what I mean? Like he's just, you know, buying an expensive toy and breaking it. But, I mean, I have to say in the wake of this election, it looks like what he wanted to use Twitter for, he was very effective at. You know, he's been he very successfully turned it into a right-wing vehicle and, you know, a right-wing organizing platform. That's essentially what it is. And having such a large platform with so much reach that is kind of specifically being targeted at right-wing organizing is like super fucking powerful. If we had something like that on the left, like that would be incredibly potent. And he seems to have effectively leveraged that. I mean, not to say that deserves too much credit for Trump winning, but it definitely deserves some. It seems like, you know, that combined with like the Dude Bro podcasts and the Andrew Tate types and the right-wing media sphere, it all has very effectively seemed to move the country to the right, especially young men, particularly in this country. You know, it's been very successful. It's similar to like the media blitzes that like the Daily Wire does or other platforms like that, where they just dump millions and millions and millions of dollars into advertising, essentially at a loss. But then the return they get is they, you know, basically buy the government or buy influence with it. And that's exactly what they've done. So, you know, given that was clearly the intention of Elon's project with Twitter, it seems to have been a success.
Yeah, that is interesting about Elon Musk. I mean, he's not a fucking idiot. He's not incompetent at all. He is, like you said, good at running large-scale operations. It's really impressive, some of the stuff he's done. And, I mean, SpaceX is a good thing. And, the proliferation of electric cars and getting away from fossil fuels is very important. And he's pushed that bar farther ahead than, anyone else by so much. It's undeniable that he's done, some good stuff. And like you said, with Twitter, he did exactly what he wanted to, help the campaign and win, Trump's favor and get in good with him so he can have whatever kind of crazy power he's going to have now. It's just, there's something so weird about him. Like, when he shows the pictures of his bedside table, and he's got a toy gun on it, and when he came out, I think it was which rally was it? It might have been the one where Tony Hinchcliffe was at, or one shortly before that. But where he's wearing the black on black MAGA hat, and he's oh, so you can see I am not only MAGA, but I am dark MAGA. What are you talking about? The some of the weird nerdy jokes and things he does is just so off the wall for someone in his place. If he wasn't so blatantly evil, I would like it. I don't know. I think we've talked about this in the past, but when he first started, becoming a public figure, I thought he was kind of cool until I saw a few interviews with him. It was really the Joe Rogan podcast, especially the first one he did COVID, that I saw him talk for any length of time and realized what a jackass he was, and then started looking into his past and Emerald Mines and all the other, bull crap, and realizing what a piece of shit he is. But it is a modern Edison. It's exactly what he is.
That's the craziest thing about billionaires, is they can actually be insanely stupid and still do incredibly impressive things and have, unthinkable power. We're conditioned to think these people are the best of us, but they're totally not. Some of these people are fucking idiots. I believe on many levels Elon Musk is truly a fucking idiot, but it maybe not as bad as some of them, but especially recently. I mean, there's just no way you can go down the path that he's gone politically and not be a fucking idiot, is my opinion.